Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another explosive update on the escalating conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States. Tonight, the Middle East has crossed a dangerous new threshold. What the world once believed to be an impenetrable fortress of defense has just been shattered in the darkness of night. While the world was still sleeping, the skies over Israel were torn apart by waves of incoming ballistic missiles. But this was not just another barrage. This time, Iran directly challenged and destroyed the crown jewel of Israel's strategic defense, the Arrow 4 system. For years, Arrow 4 was hailed as the future of ballistic missile defense, the most advanced, most expensive, and most sophisticated layer of protection ever built by Israel and the United States. It was designed to neutralize even the most complex saturation attacks and hypersonic threats. Israel and Washington placed their absolute confidence in this system. Yet, in a single night of fury, that confidence was brutally exposed. The Arrow 4 batteries lit up the sky with interceptor after interceptor, but the sheer volume, speed, and sophistication of Iran's assault overwhelmed them completely. What was supposed to be an unbreakable ballistic shield failed spectacularly. Multiple Iranian missiles penetrated the defense layers, striking critical strategic areas and sending shockwaves through the Israeli Defense Forces. For the first time in modern history, the IDF has lost control over its strategic high-altitude defense. The illusion of absolute safety has been ripped apart, and now panic is spreading rapidly from Tel Aviv to Washington. How did one of the most advanced missile defense systems in the world collapse so quickly? What does this catastrophic failure mean for Israel's entire defense doctrine? And why is the United States suddenly facing its worst strategic nightmare in the region? Tonight, we uncover the full story behind the dramatic fall of Arrow 4, the collapse of Israel's ballistic shield, and the growing panic in Washington. Stay with us, because what happened last night has changed the rules of the game forever. Arrow 4 was never just another air defense system. It was supposed to be the ultimate evolution of Israel's ballistic shield, the next generation interceptor developed jointly with the United States to counter the exact threats Iran now poses. Unveiled as a revolutionary leap forward, Arrow 4 was designed to operate at extreme altitudes, engaging incoming ballistic missiles in both the exo-atmospheric and upper atmospheric layers. With advanced sensors, improved maneuverability, and the ability to handle multiple simultaneous threats, it was billed as the system that would finally close the gaps left by its predecessors, Arrow 2 and Arrow 3. Israeli and American defense officials repeatedly claim that Arrow 4 would dramatically increase interception success rates against saturation attacks, maneuverable re-entry vehicles, and even early hypersonic threats. Billions of dollars and years of intensive development went into this project. Israel Aerospace Industries working closely with the U.S. Missile Defense Agency positioned Arrow 4 as the cornerstone of a future-proof, multi-layered defense. It was meant to give the Israeli Defense Forces the decisive edge, the power to neutralize long-range ballistic missiles before they could release their payloads or reach Israeli airspace. In war games and public statements, Arrow 4 was presented as the technological insurance policy that would keep Israel's strategic assets safe no matter how fierce the assault. But on that fateful night, reality delivered a brutal verdict. As waves of Iranian ballistic missiles streaked toward southern Israel, the Arrow 4 batteries activated with full force. The sky lit up with the fiery trails of high-altitude interceptors racing to meet their targets. For a few tense moments, it seemed as though the system might hold. Yet the sheer scale and sophistication of the Iranian barrage quickly exposed the limits of even this advanced technology. Iran did not rely on single missiles. Instead, they unleashed a coordinated saturation attack featuring multiple ballistic trajectories, varying altitudes and warheads designed to complicate interception. Several of the incoming missiles carried high-altitude cluster payloads that dispersed submunitions at heights difficult for traditional interceptors to fully neutralize. The result was overwhelming. Arrow 4 interceptors, despite their advanced guidance systems, struggled to lock onto and destroy every threat in real time. Some missiles penetrated the upper defense layer, entirely continuing their descent toward critical zones. Military sources later confirmed that Israel was forced to ration its most expensive interceptors, relying more heavily on modified lower-tier systems in an attempt to preserve stockpiles. This conservation effort itself became a vulnerability. When the Arrow 4 layer faltered under the pressure, the entire ballistic shield began to crack. Multiple Iranian warheads reached their terminal phase, striking strategic areas in southern Israel and sending plumes of smoke rising into the night sky. In a single operation, the myth of Arrow 4 as an invincible shield of the future was shattered. What was once hailed as the ultimate solution to Iran's growing missile arsenal now stood exposed as another layer with finite limits, limits that Tehran had carefully studied and exploited. The psychological blow was immediate and profound. For decades, Israeli security doctrine rested on the belief that superior technology could neutralize numerical disadvantages. Arrow 4 was the latest and greatest expression of that belief. Its dramatic failure in live combat has forced IDF commanders to confront a harsh new reality. Even the most advanced ballistic defense can be overwhelmed when faced with determined, well-orchestrated saturation tactics. As the dust settled and damage assessments began, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Israel's strategic, high-altitude defense had been breached, and the consequences would ripple far beyond the battlefield. As the dust settled and damage assessments began, one thing became terrifyingly clear. Israel's strategic high-altitude defense had been breached, and the consequences would ripple far beyond the battlefield. The collapse was not limited to Arrow 4 alone. What unfolded that night was the systematic failure of Israel's entire multi-layered ballistic shield, a defense architecture painstakingly built over decades with American backing. This shield was designed as a fortress in the sky, Iron Dome for short-range rockets, David Sling for medium-range threats, and the Arrow family for long-range ballistic missiles. Arrow 4 was supposed to be the ultimate crown, the high-altitude guardian that would stop threats before they could descend. But in the face of Iran's coordinated assault, the entire system was pushed beyond its breaking point. The attack was meticulously engineered to exploit every weakness in the layered defense. Iran launched waves of ballistic missiles on divergent trajectories and at different altitudes, forcing Israeli radars to track dozens of targets simultaneously. Many of these missiles released cluster warheads at high altitude, scattering hundreds of submunitions that created a deadly rain of smaller high-speed projectiles. This saturation tactic overwhelmed the command and control networks. Radar screens lit up with thousands of potential tracks, making it nearly impossible for operators to distinguish between real warheads and decoys in real time. Arrow 4 batteries fired repeatedly, their interceptors streaking upward in brilliant arcs. Yet even these advanced missiles could not engage every threat. The system's algorithms, optimized for more predictable scenarios, struggled with the sheer volume and unpredictable behavior of the incoming cluster payloads. As Arrow 4 interceptors expended themselves against the first wave, the second and third waves arrived faster and denser, exploiting the temporary gaps created by depleted stockpiles. Lower layers fared no better. David Sling and Iron Dome, already tasked with handling shorter-range threats in previous exchanges, were forced to divert resources upward. The result was a cascading collapse. When the upper ballistic layer failed to contain the assault, the burden shifted downward, saturating the remaining systems beyond their design capacity. Several Iranian missiles and their submunitions slipped through the cracks, detonating across strategic military zones in southern Israel and causing significant secondary damage to infrastructure and logistics hubs. What made this failure particularly catastrophic was the rapid depletion of high-value interceptors. Each Arrow 4 missile cost millions of dollars, and Israel's stockpiles, already strained from prior confrontations, were being burned at an unsustainable rate. Commanders face an agonizing choice: continue firing expensive interceptors at diminishing success rates, or conserve them for an even larger attack that might follow. In the heat of battle, that hesitation created fatal windows of vulnerability. For the first time, the Israeli Defense Forces witnessed the true limits of a technology-dependent defense strategy. The multi-layered ballistic shield, long marketed as capable of absorbing and neutralizing massive salvos, proved unable to withstand a determined high-intensity saturation campaign. The system did not vanish overnight, but its aura of invincibility was completely destroyed. Smoke rose from multiple impact sites as stunned IDF personnel assessed the damage. What had once been hailed as an impenetrable dome of protection now revealed itself as a fragile construct, powerful against limited threats, but dangerously brittle when confronted with overwhelming numbers, clever tactics, and sustained pressure. The strategic implications were immediate and sobering. With its primary high-altitude defense layer compromised and interceptor reserves critically low, the IDF could no longer guarantee comprehensive protection for its most vital assets. The ballistic shield that formed the backbone of Israel's national security doctrine had in a matter of hours been rendered far less effective than anyone in Tel Aviv or Washington had anticipated. And as the scale of the breach became clear, a new and unsettling reality began to take hold inside Israeli command centers and across the Atlantic in the United States. The Israeli Defense Forces have officially lost control over their strategic defense posture. For decades, IDF doctrine rested on a simple but powerful principle. Superior technology and layered interception would allow Israel to absorb attacks while preserving the ability to strike back decisively. That principle has now been shattered. With the ballistic shield compromised and Arrow 4 largely neutralized, the IDF finds itself forced into a reactive, defensive crouch rather than the proactive posture it once commanded. In the hours following the Iranian barrage, IDF commanders faced an unprecedented operational crisis. The high-altitude defense layer, meant to serve as the first and most critical filter, could no longer be relied upon. This forced a complete reallocation of resources. Air defense units that were previously positioned to protect strategic depth were redirected to cover immediate population centers and remaining military installations. The result was dangerous fragmentation. No single sector could be fully secured, and critical assets were left exposed to follow-up strikes. Logistics and command structures were equally strained. With interceptor stockpiles depleted at an alarming rate, resupply chains came under immense pressure. Maintenance crews worked frantically to reload launchers, but the pace of consumption far outstripped replenishment capabilities. For the first time in recent conflicts, senior IDF officers had to make real-time decisions about which threats to engage and which to let through, a terrifying calculus that no modern defense system was designed to handle on this scale. The psychological impact on the troops was profound. Soldiers trained to trust in technological superiority suddenly watched advanced interceptors fail in real time. Confidence in the entire air defense network began to erode. Reports from the field described operators experiencing decision paralysis as radar screens remained cluttered and threat assessments became increasingly uncertain. The once clear chain of command started showing signs of hesitation, with requests for guidance flowing upward faster than orders could be issued downward. More importantly, Israel has lost the strategic initiative in the defense domain. Previously, the combination of early warning systems and multi-layered interception gave the IDF the luxury of time to assess, time to prioritize, and time to prepare counterstrikes. That luxury has vanished. With the ballistic shield failing to contain incoming salvos, every subsequent Iranian launch now carries the potential to force immediate high-stakes reactions across the entire southern front. The IDF is no longer dictating the tempo of the conflict. It is struggling to keep up with it. This loss of control extends beyond the tactical level. Israel's entire national security concept, built on the idea that technology could compensate for geographic vulnerability and numerical inferiority, is now under urgent review. Military planners, who once spoke confidently about defensive dominance, must now confront the possibility of a prolonged war of attrition where sustained missile pressure could gradually degrade Israel's ability to protect both its population and its strategic infrastructure. The ripple effects are already visible. Reserve units have been placed on higher alert, civilian defense protocols are being tightened, and emergency meetings are being convened at the highest levels of government. For a military that has long prided itself on precision, deterrence, and technological edge, the sudden inability to guarantee strategic defense represents not just a tactical setback, but a fundamental doctrinal crisis. As smoke continued to rise from impact sites across southern Israel, one harsh truth became undeniable. The IDF's shield had cracked, and with it, Israel's long-held assumption of defensive superiority. The consequences of this new reality would soon reach far beyond Tel Aviv's borders, straight into the corridors of power in Washington. As smoke continued to rise from impact sites across southern Israel, one harsh truth became undeniable. The IDF's shield had cracked, and with it, Israel's long-held assumption of defensive superiority. The consequences of this new reality would soon reach far beyond Tel Aviv's borders, straight into the corridors of power in Washington. The United States is now in a state of strategic panic. Arrow 4 was never solely an Israeli system. It was a flagship joint project between the Israeli Defense Ministry and the U.S. Missile Defense Agency. American taxpayers funded a significant portion of its development, and American engineers worked side by side with their Israeli counterparts to perfect its advanced sensors and kill vehicles. For Washington, Arrow 4 represented more than just technology. It was proof that American military innovation could guarantee the security of its most important ally in the Middle East. That illusion has been violently shattered in a single night. Senior officials in the Pentagon and the White House watched real-time feeds with growing alarm as Arrow 4 interceptors failed to contain the Iranian barrage. What they witnessed was not merely a technical malfunction, but the potential collapse of an entire defense philosophy the United States had heavily invested in for over 2 decades. The rapid depletion of high-value interceptors exposed a critical vulnerability in the supply chain. Production lines for Arrow-class missiles cannot keep pace with the consumption rates seen in a high-intensity saturation attack. Stockpiles that were already strained from previous rounds of conflict are now critically low, forcing urgent discussions about emergency resupply and possible diversion of U.S. strategic reserves. Beyond the immediate military concern lies a deeper strategic crisis. American planners had long assumed that Israel's technological edge, backed by U.S. systems, would allow the Jewish state to defend itself without requiring direct, large-scale American intervention. That assumption is now crumbling. If Israel's ballistic shield can be overwhelmed this effectively, Washington must confront the uncomfortable possibility that it may soon be forced to commit far greater resources, including its own naval assets, air wings, and even ground-based systems, to prevent a total collapse of the regional balance. Inside the Beltway, anxiety is spreading rapidly. Intelligence briefings have turned tense as analysts scramble to assess how quickly Iran can sustain this level of pressure and whether other adversaries are watching closely. There is growing fear that a weakened Israel could trigger a dangerous chain reaction, embolden proxies across the region, pressure on Gulf allies, and even questions about the reliability of American security guarantees worldwide. The panic is not just military, it is political. Lawmakers who have consistently championed unconditional support for Israel now face difficult questions from their constituents and colleagues. How much more funding will be required? How many more advanced systems must be rushed into production. And what happens if the next Iranian salvo proves even more effective? For the first time in years, senior U.S. officials are being forced to acknowledge that their strategy of qualitative military edge for Israel is reaching its practical limits against a determined adaptive opponent like Iran. The comfortable belief that superior Western technology would always prevail is being replaced by a sobering new calculation in an era of massed ballistic attacks and clever saturation tactics. Even the most advanced defenses can be neutralized. As emergency meetings continue late into the night in both Tel Aviv and Washington, one thing is becoming painfully clear. The United States, long positioned as Israel's ultimate backstop, is now staring at a strategic nightmare it did not anticipate and is struggling to contain. The shockwaves from the failure of Arrow 4 have only just begun to spread. While Washington grapples with panic and Tel Aviv struggles to regain control, Tehran has quietly stepped into a new role, the force now rewriting the rules of engagement in the Middle East. Iran has demonstrated a level of tactical sophistication and strategic patience that has caught both Israel and the United States off guard. Rather than launching scattered symbolic strikes, Iranian forces executed a meticulously coordinated saturation campaign designed specifically to overwhelm Israel's most advanced ballistic defense layer. By combining multiple trajectories, varying altitudes, and high-altitude cluster warheads, Iran forced the Arrow 4 system into a losing battle of numbers and timing. This was not an act of desperation. It was the result of years of adaptation under pressure. While under heavy sanctions and repeated covert operations, Iran continued to refine its missile doctrine, focusing on quantity, speed, and the ability to penetrate multi-layered defenses. The success of this latest operation proves that Tehran has successfully transitioned from a defensive posture to one of proactive battlefield shaping. For the first time, Iran has shown it can dictate the tempo of conflict against a technologically superior opponent. By targeting the heart of Israel's strategic defense, the Arrow 4-layer Iranian commanders have stripped away the illusion of an impenetrable shield. No longer can Israel assume that its high-altitude interceptors will provide a reliable buffer. Every future Iranian launch now carries the credible threat of penetration, forcing the IDF into a permanent state of heightened readiness and resource strain. This shift represents a profound change in the regional power balance. Iran no longer needs to match Israel's technology missile for missile. Instead, it has embraced a smarter approach, using mass coordination and carefully timed salvos to expose and exploit the finite limits of even the most expensive Western defense systems. The ballistic shield that once allowed Israel to operate with relative impunity has been neutralized as a decisive factor. Tehran's new strength lies not only in its missiles, but in its ability to sustain pressure without collapsing internally. While Israel burns through irreplaceable interceptors and Washington debates emergency resupply, Iran has demonstrated the capacity to maintain operational momentum. This endurance gives Tehran a powerful new tool, the ability to prolong the conflict on its own terms and gradually erode Israel's strategic advantages. The message sent across the region is unmistakable. The old rules no longer apply. There are no longer any truly safe zones or untouchable defense layers. What was once considered Israel's greatest strength, its technological edge in missile defense, has been exposed as vulnerable. In its place, a new reality is emerging, one in which determination, careful planning, and adaptive tactics can overcome raw technological superiority. As the dust continues to settle, Iran stands poised to define the next phase of this conflict. The power to shape events has begun shifting eastward, and the Middle East will never operate under the same assumptions again. As the smoke clears over the battlefield, one lesson stands. Above all, no defense system is truly invincible. The collapse of Arrow 4 is not just a military failure, it is a warning to the entire world. In modern warfare, technology alone is no longer enough. Determination, strategy, and the ability to adapt can overwhelm even the most advanced systems ever built. For Israel and the United States, this moment forces a painful reassessment. For the rest of the world, it signals a dangerous shift where the balance of power is no longer defined by who has the most advanced weapons, but by who understands their limits best. And now, the question is no longer if the next escalation will come, but when. If you want to stay ahead of these critical global developments with real unfiltered analysis, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below, because the next move may change everything.